believe that your world exists. So, like in characters, make a character believable. Give them a relationship with the butcher, relationship with their cat, relationship with their husband or their lover. You know, and even if it's a sub-character, give little things that will help this world have these layers of believability, so when a reader's reading, they're like, oh, that sounds like a real person versus just a trope or a classic character. Kingdoms make them have real politics. Don't just give them, this kingdom is a happy kingdom. No kingdom's a happy kingdom. They all have strife. They all have their problems. So give these little nuances. But when you're learning, when a reader is reading their book, there's a learning curve. They'll start here, and then slowly that world, their level of information will go. You, as an author, you're already up here, if not way up here. But you have to decide how much information you're giving at any given time to get that reader to up here. And each book will be different. There's always, each book has a different learning curve. But you're in control of how much information you're giving at any given time to these readers. Too much, they may just have sensory overload. Too little, they're going to get confused and just stop reading. So you have to sort of decide how much you're giving throughout the things. The best and the most classic is sprinkle in as you go. Don't give them too much, just do it gradually. Each little time you're talking about something. You don't need an info dump at the beginning of your prologue, where everything, it's cliche, it's not helpful, and it's just too much for readers. They want to get into the heart of the story. Your best bet is to use a character as your lead. If you're telling a story of a kingdom where a princess is bucking her royalty duties, and she's decided she's going to go to town and steal the diamond of something, of the lamppost or the flickering light, and get it back to another town. Don't drop names. Don't say Princess so-and-so has to go to the kingdom of so-and-so to get the diamond of the flickering flame. You start with a very simple thing. There's a young girl. She's slinking through the shadows, and she's got really fine dress, but she's covered in a draped cloak, and she's sneaking into this castle, this dark, foreboding castle that's got plenty of. Suddenly, you're intriguing the reader. They want to know who this person is. Why she got this really nice dress underneath her cloak. It's these little things that you want to slowly give clues. You don't have to give the names. Don't name drop. Don't sit there and name your kingdom. Don't start using language from the if you're going to use a new word from their fancy language, that's great, but do it moderately. Don't throw one in every other paragraph, or use it in context with your story. Make your character reveal this information in ways that are important to the story as you're writing it. What's important for your reader to know at that moment for that story to come alive? What's relevant to the story to keep that plot moving? That's mainly the trick, is to find that balance where they understand, the readers understand the world enough to play in without having to know everything or know so little. So, you don't want the reader to be overwhelmed. Readers love to fill in gaps. To them, it's fun. Except for my sister, who never finds that fun. But there's always somebody who doesn't like it.
There's always someone who wants it spelled out.
Yes. But, you can't please everybody. So the best way to do it is sprinkle it. Just, think about the story you're telling. What theme you're trying to relate. What character point you're trying to reveal. What's part of the setting is important. You can have somebody go into a tavern, and then you just make that tavern come alive, not by just describing it, but think about the smells, what the character is hearing. What does the character first do when she sits down at the table, or he sits down at the table? But all those little things, those little nuances. You don't have to spend hours, 3 paragraphs talking about it, but just enough to give the reader the feel that they've been immersed into that world suddenly. So, it's basically let your character lead. And again, that's my thing. That may not be Clay's thing. Clay likes to think about the world. But to me, it's more about the character. Let those little details become relevant, and reward the reader for sticking to it. Let them discover and have a moment of revelation on their own by you giving clues. You don't have to spell it out. Give them a couple of clues. When they figure it out, towards, 3/4 of the way into the story, that's awesome. They're gonna have an exciting moment, and that's going to be their payoff for picking up this book and reading it. All right, Clay.
Okay, that's a lot about world revealing to your readers. Let's think about world building. And I'm stealing this from Brandon Sanderson again, because I love it. There's two basic elements to think about with world building. And you're sitting there with a blank page and thinking, okay, crap, I'm writing this science fiction novel set on another planet, and I want to create a whole cool new world that no one's ever done, but what goes into this world that we're living in? There's physical stuff to think about, there's cultural stuff. What are some examples of physical things that you need to consider about a world?
Geography.
Geography, is it good? Anybody?
Buildings.
Buildings, architecture, yes?
Physics.
Physics, like physical laws. Yeah, you may be in a science fiction or fantasy world where fire burns cold, or gravity doesn't work quite right. And so you've got to think about, when you start screwing around with the physical world, you really have to think about the consequences of how this world would adapt itself and how the creatures in it would adapt themselves to function in a world different from us. If there's twice the gravity, or people, have helium in their heads.
No.
Anything else physical? Climate, weather, yeah.
The beings in this world.
The types of and people and animals and
Flora.
flora and fauna. Yeah, that's what you always call it. Okay, how about cultural? What kind of things are cultural?
Religion.
Religion. A lot of religion. Food.
General rules of the society, like the Prime Directive in Star Trek.
Food, behavior, social behaviors, social rules.
Government rules.
Government and politics. History. Music. Yeah, that's good. You don't do music much.
Dress,
Clothing, apparel. Food, yeah, they got food. Believe me, that's.
I know, you should let me know.
Yes.
Weapons and fighting tactics.
Weapons, warfare.
You'll find that the cultural list will be 10 times longer.
Yeah.
There's so much to consider because there's so much that goes into world building.
In fact, there's so much. One of the things Sanderson's ideas, and this is a good one, is when you're thinking about a story, you can't deal with all this.
Yeah.
If you did, you'd have this on the page, and you don't want that. You may want to know all of it and think about it. His idea, and it's a good one, is pick out a couple. Pick out, one or two of the physical and one or two of the cultural, and focus on those. Come up with something new, different, that maybe you've never read before, a new twist on one or two of those items that make your story, your world, and therefore your story, unique. Don't feel like you've got to discuss, even if you were writing a novel, a detective novel, you wouldn't talk about all of these, because you wouldn't have to. In a fantasy novel or science fiction novel, you don't have to either. You may have nothing, you may have people eating, but you might not discuss food. On the other hand, your main character might be a chef in the castle of the king, and he's ordered to poison the king, and he refuses to. And there you go, you got to talk about food forever. Be cool.
But it narrows your focus. Again, you need to make sure that you're talking about the things that are relevant to your story. So your world building can be huge, but the world revealing points, the points that you reveal in the world, keep focused on the ones that are relevant to your story.
Yeah.
The ones that are making your story interesting and telling what you need.
Yeah, and again, the point is to look at all this stuff. This is all world building. It's amazing how much material you can draw to make a really cool story. And one of the ways you can often think about it, read widely, as with any writers, read widely, read history, read philosophy, read science, read obviously fiction in your field, but read nonfiction in every field. Look at, like, I brought this because it's one of my favorite history books. This is The Age of Empire by Eric Hobsbawm. 19th century history, but he's got a section on science and a section on religion and a section on politics, and it's a world-building history. Go find some good history and look at the issues and how changes in history change our world, and you can adapt those concepts, not those specific events, but those concepts of change to your world. It's very important. I don't necessarily recommend Hobsbawm, he's a little dry. But, so, do you want to do the application
Well,
thing?
we got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, we got 10 minutes, so I want to get questions from the audience.
Okay.
And
Yeah, are there any questions? Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about different devices that are used sometimes to reveal more of a world? Like, I know some books they'll have an ancient text, and each chapter will begin with a page of that ancient text, and it'll give you a little bit more of the world building. How do you feel about that? And are there ones that have been used frequently, ones that have been overused?
Yeah, there's a lot that have been overused, like dreams, and things like that. I mean, you've got to be very careful with utilizing some of those terms. You got to use it in a clever way, something that's brand new. Like if you're going to use ancient text, that's great, but make sure you're doing it in a unique and interesting way that hasn't been done, because everything's been done to death.
Also, make sure it ties into your story.
Right.
I mean, don't just use it as a way of talking about the world, but if the text is what your characters are after, or they've read it and they're using it, then yeah, that's legit.
Yeah.
There are bad things, though, what Sanderson calls mating butler dialogue, which unfortunately we have fallen into and everyone falls into at some point, where you have characters basically walking around talking about events in the world that no one would talk about. As you know, 10 years ago, this happened, and that's why we're where we are now. And you can get away with it occasionally, but it's an old trope, and it's done to death. We did it to death, unfortunately, but we were told, we were actually told to, by our agent. You gotta explain this crap. But yeah, you can do all those little things. You can have conversation. We'll do it sometimes. You can have opening chapters. You can do a prologue.
Look at Star
Some
Wars.
books do it, but it's tricky.
But in Star Wars, it really didn't make any difference whether you read that. You still understood. Even when the movie opened, even without the prologue, you could probably pick up what was going on.
Oh, the crawl. Yeah, you didn't have to have the crawl.
You didn't have to, but it was a cool thing.
It was stylistic.
It was a very stylistic choice.
Yes.
Do you guys recommend any books I've written scripts and I've also written articles, nonfiction articles before, but I've never tried to write a short story or a book. Well, at least not in like the last 10 years. So can you recommend a book for me to follow for me to read that might follow some of what you're talking about today?
And interestingly enough, as a screenplay writer, there are tons of screenplay writing books that fiction writers are using now.
Oh, they're using
Because,
I have tons of that.
well, like, what's the Save the Cat? Yeah, everyone read Save the Cat. There's one called, is it My Story Can Beat Up Your Story?
Yeah.
Something like that. It's great. Because screenwriting boils down the structure of storytelling to its bare bones. And fiction writers often need to understand structure before they start putting in language. I tell you, this is sort of about screenwriting too. Go back and read William Goldman's old book called Adventures in the Screen Trade. It was written in the 70s. It's still great, still fantastic about story structure. Send us an email. I can give you probably more. Let's put an email here too. Actually, our email is just Clay and Susan at ncrr.com, which is probably somebody's spectrum.com or something. But there are a lot. The only ones that are coming to mind are the screenplay writing ones, because that's the ones I've been reading recently. But,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great stuff online too. There's, I was directing my Brandon's.
oh yeah, look at Brandon Sanderson's stuff.
Look at all of his stuff. I studied under that. That's where I took most of my time watching all his long before we were doing any of this stuff, because he understands exactly plot, he understands character, he understands setting, and he understands world building, all these little natures that, and how they all boil down to coming together.
Anything else? Yes.
It's a little tangential, but since you guys are coming at it from different points of view, what is that process like? Does one write and the other edits? Are you physically writing at the same time?
Oh, we just scream at each other, so. We just yell and scream.
We
What
outline
do you do?
we outline a lot, because we want to have everything in place. So we do a chapter by chapter outline before we even start writing.
Well, but in terms of the world building.
But yeah, we go to a coffee shop to hash it all out, so we can do it in public, so we're not scared of it. But because we each bring different things. So yeah, we have to decide which of my things are going to be valid for the world and which of his things are valid for the world. When you're not collaborating, it becomes much easier. But
Yeah, it is.
but, you know, so once we get it all down, I mean, you basically have to look and say, if he wants to make the vampires not like the heat, we're going, okay, what are the ramifications of all this? And we have to start, does that change any of the things I want to bring to the table? I want to bring, you know, the fact that, you know,
Your stuff is all character. The
I know,
world was
mine is all
built.
character.
Basically, I had built Empire first and it never sold. And then we started writing together on comic books, and I said, I got this vampire thing, look at this and see what you can do with it. And she said, well, here's your problem. First of all, your women are terrible.
No, he had this great female character that was doing nothing. She was just a token, and he had this great
And she was the main
hero
character.
I loved,
Yeah.
but he didn't have any resonance because he didn't have anything to really fight for. So I gave him something to fight for. I gave, you know, and he was really cool because he had cats. But he had a castle full of cats. It was just him and cats. But there needed to be some sort of emotional connection for him. So finding this woman who was basically, you know, trapped in vampire territory and having to get out, what is she? Who is she? What does she have to do? And so he became embroiled in that. So once we developed the characters a little bit more, then the book came together, and that's what it sold.
The world was the world, it already existed. The plot was basically the plot, it's just the characters were a little wooden. Sorry. And she made them better. So, but the world building can be a problem between the two of us, and we're trying to work on a new thing right now.
Oh, like what?
Yeah. She'll come in, and she'll come in with a character-based thing. Hey, I got an idea, we can do this with these characters, and they can do this and this, and it works because of it. And all I hear is, well, the world they're sitting in, I thought we were not going to do it. Magic didn't work that way, what I heard. And then it turns into a thing.
It's brainstorming.
Yes.
Do you ever develop an entire story and then realize that you made a mistake? Or when you're developing one item, you know, physical, one
Yeah.
physical, when you start to develop one more, realize that they conflict with each other?
And what? Yeah.
Sometimes it'll change. Once you find those little points of conflict, it completely changes the rest of your world. Now you have to decide, is that the direction you want to take? You know, is this point of change that you've developed, this one story plot or this story point or this world building element, is that going to change this whole story so now it's a completely new story? Or do you want to not do that and keep what you have? Maybe find a way to make it fit right by changing this element again into something that would make it more feasible for the rest of your story.
Well, you can find a way you can either rewrite it, or you can find a way to explain the contradiction. They can both work. I mean, sometimes you think, oh man, if we'd only done it this way, this would be perfect, but that's not what we got, so we'll have to make it work. I don't think we'd ever finish an entire novel and suddenly realize, oh crap, geranium's radioactive. You can't carry that crap around in your pocket. It's never been quite that bad. Well, yes.
That kind of segues into something I was going to ask.
You got uranium in your pocket?
No, yeah. So rules and role building. One thing that annoys the mess out of me is when a book breaks a rule and it seems arbitrary.
Yes.
So I just wondered if
You can't do that.
thoughts.
You shouldn't do that.
No, but people seem to do it.
That, well, yeah, people do
It
everything.
looks so fast, makes me so angry.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you don't want to be jarred out of a story. I mean, that's one of the biggest things. And it's hard to oversee it as a writer. That's what you're hoping your beta readers, or your husband will pick up on these things, or, you know, you can't ever plan for that. You know, you can read it 100 times, and I'm sure that author read it 100 times, and maybe didn't even notice it until it was too late. And at that time, either they decided not to fix it, or they couldn't fix it in a way that would make the story, unless they had to rewrite the whole thing. But, yeah, you've got to be very careful. That's why when you start building these rules, start asking your questions. Ask the questions your readers would ask. Don't think about what you want. Think about what is the reader going to question. If you send something to say everybody can make snowballs suddenly, well, find out why. What was the first thing a reader would ask when they realized, holy crap, everybody makes snowballs? What does that mean? You know, does that mean that, you know, it's always cold? Is that something that, is it a magic thing? Is it a natural thing? You just start asking questions, and hopefully you'll start chipping away at what the readers would start focusing in on, if you can't focus in on it.
Sometimes you go contradictory because for dramatic reasons. It's like, oh my God, I'm built up with this whole thing now just because magic works this way. I can't do it, but I'm going to change the way magic works a little bit because it's magic. You shouldn't
Yeah, be consistent.
do it. Yeah, be consistent is your basic rule if at all possible. Yes, sir.
As far as giving a lot of information, sometimes you have a lot of information that's necessary
Yeah,
for
you
the
can.
character. And if you, without trying to over-explain it, but it's kind of mythological swords and sorcery type of thing.
Mhm.
If you have a big, exciting build-up and whatever, and in this case, throw a baby out the window is the end of it, and then you go on, and then put a page of explaining of the 3 different tribes that invaded the country at one time, and why this one's magic and this one's not, and
It's,
so on.
it's tricky. I mean, there are people who can do it. And it's an older style. I mean, Edgar Rice Burroughs, of course, in Mars novels, the first Mars novel is like a history text. Nobody does anything. They just talk about the world. And like H. Rider Haggard stuff a lot of times was, you go find this hidden society, and then they would talk about the society for 10
But if
chapters.
it's only like a page.
Sometimes you can get away with it. I mean, if it's
and
really well written.
You had to hint at it all along for anything to make sense at the beginning, but you still didn't know exactly
It's,
why he went insane and
it
killed.
still tends to be more elegant if you can find a way for the character to realize it rather than just have the author explaining it to the reader.
He's only a baby though.
What's that? Oh, it's only, it's only
Well, you're not in the baby's thoughts, right? You're not, you know, it's not the baby who's telling the story.
We're gonna pick up on him and then,
Oh, after that?
yeah,
But there's got to be somebody around the baby who's helping.
and that's not the idea.
Is it not possible that you just
It's a
reveal it later?
boy type of thing. He's gonna be picked up by 2 people that don't know who he is.
That's
It's
part of
one
the
of
mystery, though. I mean, that's what you want that mystery for the readers to be curious about who
Yeah.
is this kid? What is he? Why
No,
is
but
he?
this doesn't explain about him, it explains about the 3 different tribes that make up Ireland and why one is the royal and one is the magic and one is the...
It may not matter. I mean, you may really want to look at it hard and say, is this information going to take that information out and see how the story flows, and it may just not matter that that information exists at that
The
point.
actual story. Well,
Yeah.
I think
It's
take
tricky.
one more question.
Yes.
Quick question, we're asking for world building, to have the Bible. How do you organize yours that makes it efficient when you start trying to?
That's why we don't have one.
We didn't organize ours, that's how it is. We made ours very efficient. I mean, I would organize it probably along,
Yeah.
you know, you put in your physical traits of your world, you put in your basic
I would-
cultural elements, and then your characters.
I do it by themes, by plot themes, by the sections of they're relevant to the characters.
That's totally wrong.
I know, but that's the way I do it. So, like I said, we just come from different aspects. It has to be what works for you.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Like Brandon Sanderson's too.
Brendan Sanderson's awesome. I, again, recommend him, since I think they're filming this, and we stole like a third of that straight from him. We have to credit him.
Thank you very much. We really
Yeah, thank
appreciate it.